Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. You know, our feature on gut flora, the microbiome, has just been enormously successful. We normally have in our program 10,000 telephone calls per day. We've gone up to 40,000 in terms of people interested in that material. And we'll tell you more about it, but we've got a big show today. Laurie will be here. But first of all, America's critical infrastructure faces cyber attacks that could literally cripple our way of life. But now the Department of Homeland Security is taking action to protect our banking and energy sectors.
That's right, Pat. It's creating a national risk management center because security officials say the nation's power grid and economic systems are so vulnerable, our very democracy could be in danger. CBN's national security correspondent Eric Rosales brings us this story from New York.
With nearly 90% of our critical infrastructure in private hands, most of it interconnected, intelligence top brass say there is a growing crisis that requires government and private companies work together.
We are in a crisis mode. The Cat 5 hurricane has been forecast, and now we must prepare.
If that weak link is a smaller business, and that in turn connects into one of our bigger supply chains, then no matter how much work we do, we would not have created the right defenses.
The launch of the National Risk Management Center was unveiled by the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, a dedicated hub to help private companies to better coordinate, reducing risks and responding to cyber attacks.
This will provide that focal point. We will work with our partners in government who will be on stage today and others to provide you what you need to help repel, to help mitigate, to help root out the adversary from your systems.
Last year, a global attack blamed on North Korea infected hundreds of thousands of computers in over 150 countries, damaging multiple critical industries, from healthcare to telecommunications. Cybersecurity experts say the energy industry in particular is not prepared to fend off attacks. Recently, DHS officials briefed energy industry officials on targeted attacks by Russia hackers who got so deep into systems that they could have flipped a switch and cut off power to customers. Vice President Mike Pence echoed the need for the new information sharing partnership.
The President and I need you to continue to be advocates in your industry and among your peers for greater cybersecurity collaboration.
During his speech, the Vice President also called out Russia for launching a brazen, multifaceted cyber campaign to undermine our democratic process.
The United States of America will not tolerate any foreign interference in our elections from any nation state, not from Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, or anyone else. As President Trump said, we're not going to have it.
Pence ended his speech saying the Trump administration will continue to protect our liberties and bring these cyber hackers to justice. Eric Rosales, CBN News, New York.
Thanks, Harry. We've been raising the alarm on this for some time. It is really critical. You know, it just takes some little kid with a high school degree sitting in a garage someplace to hack into our systems. And they've hacked the Defense Department. They've hacked the Department of Energy. They have hacked leading banks and department stores and so forth. They have stolen millions of records. It is just a tragedy. And we don't have to be vulnerable. The NSA is without peer among the nations in its ability to launch cyber attacks. And I think we need to get active. If somebody's coming after us, we need to come after them harder. And we have the ability to do it. But it's a frightening thing that they could actually shut down the power grid, take away the electric power of millions of people, cause economic dislocation of our money supply and our stock markets. It's just horrible to think about. So anyhow, it's something that we need. I'm glad they're having high-level discussions, but it's time to stop talking and get action. We've got to have action to harden the grid immediately. I mean, not just way down in the future, but right now. Because there's so many things. I mean, you can actually have an EMP blast, a thermonuclear bomb, and also just a solar flare could knock it out. So we've got to do something. Now, by the way, Regent University now has a this Department of Cybersecurity. We have a cyber range that is training people. The Naval Intelligence has already had one group of its executives come in for a week-long course in training how to ward off. It's like having a plane on autopilot where you have got pilots with simulations of various events. We can simulate a cyber attack and then teach people how to respond to it. And if you're interested, by the way, these, especially for executive teams, it's 866-910-7615. And that's kind of exciting, but we're at the cutting edge on that. And we have a sophisticated cyber range. I'm told it may be the most sophisticated of any university in America. And people are being trained. As I say, we're being visited by people from serious government agencies and also businesses. So the so-called executive suite, the C-suite of businesses can come, and all of their people, or 4 or 5 or 6, can sit on that cyber range all at one time, and then they can war game and run through the scenario of what an attack is like and how you counter it for your business. So it's very important, and that's the number. And if you're interested, call. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, I think people are just waking up to what a potential threat this really is. And Regent University is prepared.
Well, you know, it was a few years ago, we didn't have computers. For example, people kept ledgers, and they were all written out in hand. Now everything's on computer, and then the computers are tied together across the country. And a little glitch in one of them can take down the whole network, and that's what's so frightening.
And disturbing to think it might not be a rogue nation like North Korea. It could be a teenager in his basement.
That's all it would take. Exactly right. And they're going through a bunch of keys. All right. Well, in other news, there's more evidence that outside groups are trying to undermine our democracy, and they're using social media to do it. Oh, Facebook has been hit with a big problem. And here's our CBN News Bureau in Washington with John.
That's right, Pat. Facebook uncovered what it calls sophisticated efforts to politically manipulate American politics on the social network. The company uncovered or removed about 32 fake accounts it said were involved in, quote, inauthentic political behavior. While Facebook did not explicitly blame Russia, a spokesperson said it's clear that whoever set up these accounts went to much greater lengths to obscure their true identities than the Russian-based Internet Research Agency has in the past. The House Intelligence Committee will meet with Facebook executives in September. Well, it's day 2 in the trial of former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, who faces charges of bank fraud and tax evasion. In opening statements Tuesday, prosecutors say Manafort directed tens of millions of dollars into offshore accounts to use as personal income. It's the first trial to come from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. The president's team points out that Manafort's trial has nothing to do with the campaign.
He has no information incriminating of the president. I know that for a fact. They can squeeze him. Paul Manafort does not know anything.
Pat, in one of the defenses for Manafort, his attorneys are saying the businessman left others to manage the details of his finances.
Well, I think he was up to his eyeballs in working with the Ukrainians, and he made a huge amount of money. I mean, millions and millions of dollars. And perhaps he hasn't declared everything on his taxes, but this is not the mandate for this special counsel. He has not been given a mandate to investigate IRS cheating. That's not what he's supposed to do. And for him to bring criminal charges about somebody having to do with financial improprieties in his own personal account is just ridiculous. So he's supposed to check on Russian meddling in our election. And we're not sure if Paul Manafort did that. He sure was getting paid big bucks to deal with the Ukrainian opposition party leaders, and he was a big thief. It was Black, Manafort, and Stone. They were the Charlie Black and Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. They were the big political consultants some years ago, and he's still big. And they may put him to jail on tax fraud, but it's not the province of the special counsel. He's in the wrong game, and he shouldn't be indicting people on this issue because that's not what he was commissioned to do. John?
Pat, those raging wildfires consuming parts of Northern California are creating their own weather systems. High winds combined with off-the-scale temperatures are creating what are called fire tornadoes, a terrifying vortex of smoke and flame. Witnesses describe the rare phenomenon as a towering funnel of fire with powerful outer winds. 7 deadly blazes have torched more than 1,000 homes in California. The Carr Fire in the north is the most destructive fire in the state's history. Pat?
Here again, we don't know exactly what the cost is going to be, but the actual cost of just fighting it is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But that's just the start of it. Think of the human suffering. Think of the loss of property. Think of the devastation to tourism, to business, all the way up and down the line. And it's in the billions and billions of dollars. And as they say, they used to have a fire season. Now it's a fire year. It's just, this drought just continues, and it's devastating. My daughter, Ann, is involved with the Mercy Chefs. They are in Redding, California, where those firefighters are just being exhausted by the amount of work they've got to do. It's just a terrible thing. They're working night and day to contain these fires, and so Mercy Chefs is out there trying to provide hot meals for them so that they can have some respite from that work. But it's devastating, and I think we should pray for California, because this is going to, it won't just affect California, it'll affect the whole nation.
And to pray for rain without lightning, that's one of the requests that we're getting, because this time of year that seems almost impossible, but with God all things are possible, and He can do it.
Well, that's the rain without lightning. Okay, John, what's next?
Pat, a miraculous story out of Mexico. A Mexican passenger jet with about 100 people on board went down in high winds, but everyone on board survived. As Charlene Aaron reports, some were even able to walk away.
On its way to Mexico City, Aeromexico Flight 2431 crashed in a field shortly after takeoff. Video from the crash site looked devastating. The aircraft ripped open, wings crumpled, and firefighters trying to control flames. Survivors say the plane burst into flames after it hit the ground, but stayed mostly intact. While 49 people are in the hospital, no one was killed. Some on the ground are calling it a miracle. This woman says she and her son jumped out of a hole in the plane's fuselage. I unbuckled my son's seatbelt, and we got out that way. We jumped. Other passengers managed to escape the wreckage as firefighters raced to the scene to put out the fire. A Catholic priest from Chicago broke his arm in the crash. He called his church to tell them he survived.
He tells us that he's more or less okay, that he's been checking how he's doing his body, probably has some broken bones.
The plane carrying 97 passengers and 4 crew members had just taken off in a blustery storm from an airport in Durango State when it went down and skidded to a stop. The state's governor says the pilots were attempting to abort just after takeoff, but it was too late. Meanwhile, the plane's pilot is in critical but stable condition. Joy replacing sorrow for what could have been a tragic ending.
Let me tell you one thing, Sunday going to be a lot of people praying and asking for him.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thanks, Charlene. Pat, when you look at that footage, miracle is the only word to describe the fact that no one was killed.
Unbelievable, and it's just, it's a miracle of God, so we're delighted. Because the tragedy like that, it looked like the whole plane was taken apart and every single passenger should have died, and none of them did. It's a miracle, and for that we're grateful.